The Holy Gospel according to John. Now some of the people of Jerusalem were saying, "Is not this the man whom they are trying to kill? And there he is speaking openly, but they say nothing to him. Can it be that the authorities really know that this is the Messiah? Yet we know where this man is from. But when the Messiah comes, no one will know where he is from." Then Jesus cried out as he was teaching in the temple, "You know me and you know where I'm from. I have not come on my own, but the one who sent me is true, and you do not know him. I know him because I'm from him, and he sent me." Then they tried to arrest him, but no one laid hands on him, because his hour had not yet come. Yet many in the crowd believed in him, or saying, "When the Messiah comes, will he do more signs than this man has done?" The Pharisees heard the crowd muttering such things about him, and the chief priests and the Pharisees sent temple police to arrest him. Jesus then said, "I'll be with you a little while longer, and then I'm going to him who sent me. You will search for me, but you will not find me, and where I am, you cannot come." The Jews said to one another, "Where does this man intend to go, that we will not find him? Does he intend to go to the dispersion of the Greeks and teach the Greeks? What does he mean by saying, 'You will search for me, and you will not find me, and where I am, you cannot come'?" The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Christ. 도가도 비상구, 명가명 비상구. If the way can be said, that way is not the true way. If the name can be named, that name is not the true name. Are you familiar with this saying? This saying comes from the very first verse of Tao Te Ching, a book usually ascribed to Lao Tzu, an ancient Chinese philosopher who supposedly lived in the 5th century BCE during the Zhou dynasty. Although I'm not Chinese, many people in my home country, South Korea, know this saying regardless of their religious background. It came to my mind when I started reading today's passage from John. Some of you might wonder what John's Jesus has to do with this ancient Chinese philosopher. Of course, I'm not here to offer you a lecture on the comparative study of religion or East Asian philosophy today. But I am here to show you how this quote from Tao Te Ching resonates with my understanding of Jesus in today's passage. I hope that by the end of my sermon, you will see why I cite Lao Tzu. So today's gospel reading allows us to meet Jesus, who is now in Jerusalem, in the middle of the festival of the tabernacle, known as Sukkot. And Jesus' presence in Jerusalem seems to cause a great discomfort and confusion to many people there, to say the least. According to the preceding passage, Jesus not only performed a healing miracle showing a sign on the Sabbath, but also taught in the temple during the festival. His teachings must have been really powerful, for he appeared to attract some followers after all. But we can also infer from his former career in Galilee that his message was quite unacceptable and even sacrilegious to some people. For example, in chapter 6, after hearing Jesus teaching about the bread of life, "I am the bread of life," even many of his disciples ended up leaving him. So we might assume that Jesus' teaching and healing provoked quite mixed reactions from the people in Jerusalem. Truly, John's Jesus is an enigmatic figure, and not many of us can immediately make sense of his saying in today's passage. Just like the question at the end. What does he mean by saying, you will search for me and you will not find me, and where I am, you cannot come? So let's try to unpack the people of Jerusalem's reaction to Jesus a little bit further. At least 3 groups are present in this passage. The first group, identified as some in Jerusalem, seemed bothered by Jesus upon witnessing Jesus' sayings and these firsthand. They marveled at Jesus' power, but still had doubts about his identity, wondering why the Jewish authorities said nothing to Jesus. And the second group is simply described as many, or the crowd. And interestingly, this group believed in Jesus only because of the wondrous signs he performed. Then the third group is the chief priests and Pharisees, namely the people in power. They went so far as to perceive Jesus as a threat, and so to arrest and kill him. But at the moment, within the literary context of chapter 7, actually they failed. They couldn't kill him. Obviously, Jesus is not everyone's favorite here. And in John 7, some people whispered, he is a good man. But others replied, no, he deceives the people. And a little later, some crowd even says, Jesus, you are crazy. You are demon possessed. Why are people so confused and alarmed by Jesus? In fact, the reasons for this reaction, even though these groups' response is quite different, I think the reasons boil down to one question, as we see in John 7:26. Yes. Is this the Messiah? Is this the Messiah? Really? In fact, whether these groups of people like Jesus or not, no one in this passage seems to recognize that he is the Messiah. Even the crowd who believes Jesus seems to be open to the possibility that Jesus may not be the coming Messiah. All these people are scrambling to figure out who Jesus is, asking themselves, can Jesus' miracles and teachings confirm that this man really the Messiah that we've been taught about for so long? But even when some of them were ready to answer yes to this question, they cannot do so. To these people, including the Jerusalem elite and authorities, Jesus never ever fits the checklist of messianic qualifications. Take a further look at the wider literary context of this passage, such as John 7:15. When the people in the Jerusalem temple were astonished at Jesus' teaching, what did they say? Here comes the literal translation of the Greek, pos utos grammata ide me mematikos. How does this man know letters when he has no learning? In other words, Jesus didn't go to Harvard Divinity School. Did he get a bachelor's degree from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem? No. Some wish to validate Jesus' compelling message by turning to his educational background, but Jesus was a man with no formal schooling. And some scholars even suggest that the historical Jesus was illiterate. How could this young man be the Messiah we were waiting for? This issue of Jesus' identity became even more troublesome because some people could identify his hometown, as in verses 41, 42, and 53. When some say, this is the Messiah, others ask, surely the Messiah does not come from Galilee, does he? They insist, search And you will see that no prophet is to rise from Galilee. They are saying, look at this horse-looking guy from rural Galilee. He's not even close to a prophet. The Messiah is supposed to come from the house of David, born and bred in Jerusalem, this urban center full of the glory of ancient days. Remember, the Pharisees used Jesus' humble background to immediately deny the power and authority he just demonstrated. Flummoxed and even offended, the Jerusalem elites and authorities are trying hard not to acknowledge that Jesus is the Messiah. Although Jesus is powerful in speech and deeds, they all presume that Jesus' look, his education, and his social background disqualify this guy from being the Messiah they know to expect. Now, do you see many people in Jerusalem sort of oscillating between their own convictions about the way things should be versus the real and powerful phenomena that are just unfolding before their eyes so vividly? In this particular figure of Jesus, these people in Jerusalem confidently and conveniently name the truth about the Messiah and claim that there is only one way to identify the Messiah. Refusing to listen carefully to Jesus, they only got stuck on the name Galilee, disclosing their cultural biases about people from this reason. Then Jesus reacts by crying out, "You sort of know me. You know where I'm from. Yeah, I'm Jesus, son of Joseph, from Nazareth, Galilee. But does this background matter to you? Why do you care about my hometown? For generation. You pretend to know God, the law, the scriptures, but you do not know the true God who sent me. Doesn't God teach you in John 7:24, do not judge by appearances, but judge with the right judgment? My power, my worth, my dignity originate from God who has sent me, not from narrow human knowledge or from worldly categories that divide us. About 14 years ago, when I was studying at Harvard Divinity School as an MDiv student, I got a phone call from my father, a Baptist pastor in South Korea. He told me that he had been invited to serve on a special committee on women's ordination for the Korean Baptist Convention, or KBC, a sister denomination of the U.S.'s Southern Baptist Convention. During my college years, I had begun to think seriously about my call to ministry. But it didn't take me long to learn that my father's denomination did not ordain women to be ministers. The reason was simple. Women can do many things in the church, but cannot be ordained, for the Bible tells us so. Of course, this was very shocking and disappointing to me, and this experience eventually led me to pursue feminist biblical interpretation. But when my father, by the way, appearing on the South Korea's some Christian newspaper, and he is on the front, just with his head, doing this, in a prayer posture. He's the guy. Do you see this old man committee? Yes, that's right. My father is there, right? And when my father said he would serve on this special committee to study the possibility of women's ordained ministry in the KBC, my heart began to pound. I was very curious to know what my father would say in those committee meetings and how the matter would proceed. He first asked me how scholars in the US interpret those biblical passages used to oppose women's leadership roles in the church. At least he seemed to be open to new findings rather than just got stuck to the denomination's long-held doctrine. And after all, he added that in his first committee meeting, actually, he said this, he would absolutely vote for women's ordination because his daughter is an MDiv student. Very personal.
Yeah.
But even so, it took the committee a long time to reach a consensus. There was much debate within the committee and beyond the committee about the biblical grounds for and validity of women's ordained ministry. In fact, it was 7 years after my father was first elected to the committee that the motion for women's ordination finally carried at the 2013 General Assembly, receiving 211 votes out of 298. Then here's a question. What really moved this committee and eventually the denomination's voting members to pass this proposal? What? I think it was neither a refined doctrine grounded in systematic theology, nor a sophisticated scholarly finding about some controversial biblical passages. Instead, it was real people, real women in flesh and blood, witnessing that they were just as capable of ministering to God's children as their male colleagues. In particular, that's what I heard from my father. The special committee listened carefully to the stories and voices of women missionaries in Nepal and Central Asia. Their faith was strong. Their teaching and ministry in those unfamiliar places were powerful. Yet because they were women and they couldn't baptize people and they couldn't preside over a communion. Upon witnessing these women's teachings and deeds, the denomination's voting members finally understood the gender barrier and stereotyped understandings of women's social status and background were meaningless before God. There was a time when people thought that women were not worthy of ministerial leadership. And we still live in a time when some people explicitly show their discomfort, say the least, about ordained ministry by people of color and people from the LGBTQIA community, because they feel that these people who look quite different do not fit the checklist of ministerial qualifications. But my friends and siblings at LSTC, let me be really honest. I often encountered deep gaps between human thoughts and reality, between what is firmly believed and what is in fact unfolding before me, and between what I consider to be true and the actual truth. What truth are we speaking today? Where is the way to Jesus? Does the truth you know set you free from all human biases, prejudices, and boundaries? Or is that truth an assumption or personal conviction that keeps us, you and me, from finding, engaging, and valuing real people whose dignity, worth, and power come directly from God, our Creator. When we seek Christ based only on our firm ideological agenda, predetermined beliefs, and set doctrines, we cannot find the real Jesus, Jesus the incarnate, who is present among us. Perhaps that's why Jesus says to us today, you will seek me, but you will not find me. Where I am, you cannot come. If the way can be said, the way is not the true way. If the name can be named, that name is not the true name. As we enter the second week of this new academic year, Jesus urges us to go beyond the limits of theories and words and to see what's before us in flesh and blood before defining anything too firmly. I pray that throughout this academic year, we can push our boundaries a little further and see the true line and the reality that is vividly testifying to God's immense wisdom and love in front of us. Amen.